Welcome to the Engerati studio. We're located at the Asian Utility Week in Bangkok, and we're privileged today to have Mr. Paul Nelsen with us. He's the Senior Director of the Smart Grid Solutions APAC for Itron. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Denise.
It's a great pleasure.
Great to be here.
Do you want to give us a bit of background on Itron and what you're doing here exactly, what your intentions are?
Sure. So, as many people know, Itron is the world's largest provider of smart metering solutions. We've been in the business of automating meter reading and utility solutions for over 30 years. And now we're really turning our focus to look at where our technology and services can provide solutions for utilities in the smart space, and very much focused on delivering that connectivity and the value out of that.
Yeah, okay. What is Itron's plans for this particular region? I know you can't give too much detail on certain projects, but what are the plans maybe going forward for the next five years or so?
Sure. I think Itron's mission generally is to help our customers more efficiently deliver electricity and water to their customers to create a more resourceful world. And so before we look at our strategy, I think it's important to look at the context of the greater industry and the challenges that utilities in Asia are facing. Asia is a really big place. Yeah. So if we just sort of start with Southeast Asia, which is where we are today, it's a very diverse location. You've got all the way from developing economies where utilities are worried about electrification and just getting services to customers, to some of the most advanced and dense cities in the world where you have very robust networks and utilities are really concerned with getting the last bit of reliability and capability out of those networks. So when you look at the broader economic context, Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing economic regions in the world. And when you combine that fast GDP growth, which increases the demand for energy, with the fact that you're actually electrifying new customers, the demand for energy in this region is soaring. And that faces utilities with a number of pressures. So we're seeing a number of countries where there are supply constraints, so more generation is needed. Customers, of course, are less tolerant of polluting generators or fossil fuels, so they're demanding more renewable integration. You're also seeing constraints in the transmission and distribution networks as cities become denser. And more vertical, you have to be able to put more energy into a small space. And finally, I think there's a problem in this part of the world with non-technical loss or theft, which adds and compounds to these supply constraints. So as Itron, we look at our portfolio of capabilities, which is really sensing, communications, and software, and look at how can we uniquely solve these problems. We've been working with utilities in the Asia-Pac region for well over 20 years, and we've worked with them to help them deregulate markets, to reduce their non-technical losses in the commercial and industrial sectors, to implement prepayment programs so that they can, increase their electrification. What we're very focused on now is how can we help utilities make that transition from traditional to smart. And so over the last couple of years, we've had a few projects in the region where we've brought OpenWay, which is our world-leading AMI solution or smart grid solution, to the Asian region. And we've experimented with what value can we offer and what are the uniquely Asian constraints. So how do we offer the same value in demand response in APAC that we have in other parts of the world? And so what we have on the stand here today and what our driving strategy is, at least in the electricity side of the business for the next several years, is the OpenWay solution with the new Riva technology platform. And Riva combines two unique technology elements. The first is our adaptive communications technology, which was designed specifically to meet the challenges of the dense urban high-rise centers like Bangkok and Hong Kong and Singapore, where traditional radio frequency mesh has some issues and traditional PLC has some issues. But by putting the two of them together into a single mesh, we're able to solve those problems in the lowest at the lowest possible cost of deployment, and therefore make it easy for utilities to roll out.
It's good news for utilities as far as cost is concerned.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
And then the second piece is that we've pushed intelligence to the edge of the network, and that enables us to offer some very unique software solutions to the problems of non-technical loss and asset management, where instead of pulling things to the back office all the time, we're able to actually make decisions in real time in the field.
Have you got any, perhaps any numbers or statistics or percentages, where these improvements are already being realized? Areas that that have actually used this technology and the improvements are visible already? So
we've definitely seen improvements in connectivity, where the connectivity, we're able to see where you would normally see a 200 to 400 meters per router in a power line carrier system, where we are able to connect 2,000 to 4,000 meters on that same piece of infrastructure equipment. So that definitely lowers the cost because both of deployment and of ongoing maintenance.
Right. With regards to implementation of all these technologies, I mean, are there challenges within this region as far as processes and perhaps even red tape is concerned? I imagine it would vary a lot according to various countries in the region, but what are the main challenges that perhaps other vendors could come face to face with?
Well, I think there's on the process side, I think they're not necessarily unique to Asia, but because Asian utilities tend to be large, government-owned or very highly regulated utilities, and there's very hierarchical structures within them, the process problems that they face are not uncommon around the world, but maybe exacerbated, and that is that to get the best value from these solutions, they can't be single purpose.
Right.
So the solution has got to be multi-purpose, and in order to get the best return on investment and the best value for the consumer, it's got to serve the needs of multiple departments. So if the distribution department, for example, doesn't interact well with the metering department, you could end up in a situation where you double your network infrastructure to serve the same purpose. So the big process challenge for these utilities is really around breaking down some of the traditional walls and collaborating on a single vision for the outcome, and that enables you to invest in a single technology, particularly a single network, that can serve the needs of the whole utility.
Right. And in the same breath, what about opportunities? It sounds like there's an incredible amount of growth within this region, within the power sector.
Sure.
And what opportunities are there at the moment?
I think there's the opportunities are huge, particularly because when we started this journey of smart in the distribution network, there wasn't, there was no history. So now that we have history, the technologies have advanced quite a lot over the 10 years, so they're much more open. When we all started this journey, the networks were very single purpose. Now, and Itron partnered with Cisco to really make this happen, the networks are much more open and multi-service. So rather than having to push everything through a single piece of software and control access that way, it functions much more like a network, an IT network, or the internet. And so you can run multiple applications over this. So utilities who are starting today benefit from all that innovation that's happened over those last 10 years. And with the embedding of intelligence, again, non-technical loss and theft, it's possible to be much more specific about where the diversion may be happening, and takes less manpower to churn through the data in the back office. So the opportunity is quite significant.
With regards to Itron's plans, perhaps going 5 years, maybe even a decade along, where do you see this region developing?
I would say this region is going to be a very significant growth driver for us. There's a lot of expansion in the region in the electricity industry today. There's also a great interest in smart cities. And in generally improving the quality of life for everybody. And that fits very well with our vision of being more resourceful, which is really doing more with what you have. And so through that, we see an expansion from the traditional space for Itron into the Internet of Things and the smart cities, where we're we're pushing the technology today. I mean, people talk a lot about the Internet of Things as a future possibility. It's here now. The technologies that are being deployed are IPv6 enabled, they are standards based, and that allows for innovation beyond what we've seen before. It also enables you to put multiple different companies onto the same network without them having to see each other's data. So addressing those privacy concerns for utilities and allowing them to harvest yet more value from the solutions they deploy.
Right. My last question for you. This is now the last day of the event. Walking away from the event, what advice would you give other, perhaps other vendors or private investors, and what would your message be to the power sector here?
So I don't like to give advice to competitors, so we'll stick to the power sector. That's a daunting question.
That is fair enough.
There's a lot of smart folks in this industry, and so it's hard to give advice. But what Itron has done over the last couple of years is we've started doing a survey called the Itron Resourcefulness Index. And what we do there is we poll over 1,500 utility executives and consumers and see whether that can give us any insight into the trends in the industry and where things can go. And this year's report had a lot of insights, but there were two that were particularly interesting to me. The first is that consumers want more information about and access to information about consumption and conservation.
Right.
And the truly interesting part of that is there's a disconnect. Utility executives think they're doing a pretty good job. Consumers think they're not doing such a good job and wish the information could be more actionable and more on target for them. So that presents some real opportunities to help narrow that divide. The other thing that was very encouraging is that consumers and utility executives recognize the need to transform and modernize the infrastructure.
Right.
And by doing that, because they agree on that, there's a real opportunity here to move things forward. Now, utility execs are more concerned with making sure they can meet the demands and the challenges, whereas consumers are more interested in how they grow and how they become more green and the integration of renewables. Personally, I would say, begin with the end in mind. This is a very large opportunity for transformation, and it's very important to define a vision which includes the possibilities that are 10 years out, that might include connecting your network to a city network, or even having your distribution network be capable of detecting a fault on its own and notifying the police in the local area without human intervention, and then work backwards to your first projects and say, well, we know we're going to get value from this project today, but let's make sure that the infrastructure we put in place will support that 10-year vision. Because it's there, it's available, the Internet of Things is now, and you can start investing in something that you know is going to be globally supported for the next 30 years.
Well, that's sound advice, having a long-term vision, and I think that would probably be applicable for most places around the world, quite honestly. Well, that's all the time that we have today, unfortunately, Paul, but I thoroughly enjoyed the interview. Thank you so much for your time. I trust that the last day of the event is going to be a successful one for you. And to our viewers, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. There are other interviews online, so please do go and have a look at those. Thank you for joining us.